Hey guys, in today's video I want to go over a really fascinating and instructive Scrabble position that I encountered in a game I played against my good friend and fellow expert Andy Hoang at a tournament he ran in Virginia earlier this year. Now, the reason I love this position and that I wanted to make a video out of it is because I think it's like the perfect illustration of how the mathematical concepts of probability and combinatorics can apply to Scrabble. So if you know anybody who loves Scrabble, but maybe thinks of it as exclusively a word game, and who might appreciate a deeper understanding of the mathematical side of the game, especially at the top level, definitely send them this video. So here's the situation. It was a pretty rough game for me the whole way through. Andy was quite a bit ahead pretty much the entire game, and just when I was finally starting to claw back, Andy lays down yet another bingo of they're in for 79 points, once again increasing his lead to over 100. So my first reaction is, alright, that's game over. He's up over 100. I've got a B, 2 I's, and a P. I'm not going to be able to bingo here, and there's just no way I'm going to be able to come back. But then I took a closer look at my tile tracking and noticed a very interesting thing. Of the 9 tiles unseen to me, of which 2 were in the bag, 7 were on Andy's rack, all of them were consonants. As you guys can see on the right, the 9 unseen tiles to me were 2 D's, a J, 2 L's, 2 N's, an R, and an S. Of course, I didn't know what 7 of these tiles were on Andy's rack and what 2 were in the bag, but I knew regardless Andy wouldn't have any vowels, and that would severely limit his options for the next turn. The key thing about having no vowels is that it's going to make it very difficult, if not completely impossible, for Andy to block certain bingo threats I might have. And being down over 100, I figured to win this game I needed to not only bingo, but also bingo for a lot of points. And the best way to do that, especially given that Andy just put a T in the middle of 2 triple word scores, is going to be for me to triple or play an 8-letter word through the T, covering both of those triple word scores at the same time. And the catch is, for Andy to block the T, he would need to play something through either the T or the tile right below the T, namely an H. And with no vowels himself, trying to play through a consonant is of course going to be extremely difficult. In fact, the only possible thing Andy could have through either of those tiles is SH with just an S for 5 points. So what that means is if Andy doesn't have the S, he's going to literally have no way whatsoever to block the T. So with all that in mind, I decided to play my B next to the E and therein, forming the word B for just 4 points. The idea with this play was twofold. Idea number 1 was that if I draw one of the 2 remaining N's in the bag, I'm going to have the word pristine through the T and therein for 140 points. And idea number 2 is that it's going to be completely unblockable, because at this point, even if Andy does have the S, he's now no longer going to be able to play SH as I was talking about before, because SB is of course not a word. So at first I thought with this play, whenever I draw an N, I'm always going to be winning this game, because like I said, I'm going to have an unblockable 140-point play on the next turn, and also, by playing 1 tile, I leave 1 tile in the bag for Andy. So whatever he plays on his next turn, he's going to have to empty the bag, and once he empties the bag, after I bingo with pristine, I'm going to be bingoing out, ending the game on the spot, and also presumably catching him with an unplayable J. So my first instinct was that with B, I'm going to win if and only if I draw an N. And how often does that happen? Well, there are 9 tiles unseen and 2 of them are N's. So that means the odds of me drawing an N are pretty simple to calculate. It's just 2 out of 9. However, there is a catch, and I did realize this catch during the game. I win almost always, but not always when I draw an N. Remember, when I draw an N, there's still going to be 1 more tile left in the bag. And if that tile left in the bag is the J, I have a problem. And at first you might think, well, what's the problem? Like I just said before, Andy is going to make a play, then he's going to pick up the J, and I'm going to bingo out, catch him with the J, and win easily. The problem, guys, is that Andy does not have to make a play. If the J is still in the bag, then Andy should not make a play. He should pass his turn, scoring 0, thereby not emptying the bag. The idea with that would be, if I then triple with pristine, I not only don't end the game on the spot, but I'm also going to be the one to pick up the J. And there are going to be no spots on the resulting board for me to play the J, and I'm going to get stuck with it, and Andy's actually going to be able to come back and win. I know that's a lot to take in, so let me explain in practice how this would work. So if, as I said, I do succeed in drawing one of the 2 N's for pristine, but leave the J in the bag, this is going to be Andy's rack. He of course has no vowels. And if, as we were saying before, he makes any play on the board, such as bell over here or ran over here, it doesn't matter, then if he draws the J, I'm going to triple out with Pristine and win the game. So what Andy should do here, as I was saying before, is pass his turn. If Andy passes, and I now triple with Pristine for 140, then once again, guys, the idea is there is still a tile in the bag, so I am not ending the game. And yes, I do take a 40-point lead, but now I have drawn the J, and I am going to be stuck with it. There is nowhere on this board whatsoever for me to play the J. And while Andy is down 40 points here, keep in mind, he's going to be getting 8 times 2 or 16 bonus points when he eventually goes out because of my unplayable J, and he can take his sweet time here. He can just play off 1 or 2 tiles at a time and accumulate points until he has enough to overtake me. And it's not too hard to see that Andy's going to be able to get more than enough points. I'm not sure this is the optimal sequence for Andy, but one such way he could play off 1 tile at a time to really pad the score would be this sequence. He can play Ani and Anne for 5, I pass. Org and Rand for 11, I pass again. Bell for 10, I pass yet again. Bell for 6, I pass for the 4th time. Ad for 10, and you see now Andy has already overtaken me without even getting the bonus points from the J. I, of course, pass yet again. Da for 7, I pass for the final time, and going out with Zaz and So, and Andy would win comfortably 508 to 469. So you can see there, guys, how Andy accumulated about 80 points in this endgame just from playing off 1 tile at a time. So once again, what this means is back in the original position, when I played B for 4 points, if the J is still in the bag, I'm screwed because Andy is going to pass his turn. If I draw the J, then I of course can't bingo with it immediately, and the problem then is, with just 1 tile in the bag, I have nowhere to play the J on this board without playing other tiles, and if I have to play off the J and other tiles, I'm not going to have enough tiles to bingo, and I'm of course going to lose. And as we just saw, if I don't draw the J, I might hit Pristine for 140, but then after Andy passes, I'm still going to have the J, and I'm going to be stuck with it, and he's going to win easily in the endgame. So I actually need 2 things to happen to win the game after B. Thing number 1 is, of course, I need to draw one of the 2 ends in the bag for Pristine. Thing number 2 is I need to leave as the second tile in the bag something other than the J. In other words, I need Andy to have drawn the J after his bingo of their end. Because if Andy has the J, then passing doesn't work for him. Because at that point, if he passes, I just triple with Pristine, and it's not too hard to see that if I draw any of the remaining tiles other than the J, I'm going to have multiple places to play it on my next turn in the endgame, and thus he's not going to be able to stick me and go through that crazy sequence that we looked at before. It's worth mentioning that there are other bingos I can draw through the T that aren't triples after B, but even if I catch Andy with the J in the endgame, they're not going to be enough to win. For instance, if I draw one of the 2 Ds, I can hit Spirited for 83, and if I draw the S, I can hit Spiriest for 80. The problem is, if Andy doesn't already have the J, in other words, if the J is still in the bag, he can just pass as he did before. And if he has the J, then if he also has the R, he's going to have a pretty high scoring play of Raj through the A in Mikveh, making Org and Ahi scoring well and getting rid of his J, which is of course going to be more than enough to win. So really the only interesting case is if Andy has the J and also does not have the R. If that happens, Andy would probably have a rack like this. Even though he'd see that I have an unblockable Spirited for 83 if he draws one of the 2 remaining Rs, he can actually just play Bend for 14, and he's going to have enough of a lead to withstand it. Because I will bingo out for 83 and catch him with the unplayed J and some other tiles, but he's going to hold on, as you can see, and win by 5 points, 443 to 438. Part of the reason I played B in the original position, besides blocking Andy's potential play of SH obstructing the top triple, was that it stops J plays like Gel that he might potentially have through the E and therein. You might be wondering what happens if instead of playing B, I make a higher scoring B-fish like Ab and Bow on the left for 12. It turns out that this play actually wins under the same exact circumstances as B, namely if and only if I draw an N and Andy already has the J. It's true that if Andy has the S along with the J, he can now actually block Pristine by playing SH for 5, which, as I said before, is part of why I played B. But one aspect of this position I missed during the game is that if Andy blocks with SH, I'm still going to be able to bingo out with Inspire, making YE down the B column, and because Andy only played off 1 tile, and is going to have so much left on his rack, I'm actually still going to win narrowly. Let me show you guys how. After my play of Ab, if Andy has a rack like this, if he tries to block the triple with SH, then the problem is I'm still going to have Inspire for 77 down the B column, As a matter of fact, I could also play Pineries for 76, still making SI through the E and therein as well. But in any case, Inspire is 1 more point, so that's what I would bingo out with. And while I'm still down 20, Andy has a lot of points on his rack, and I'm going to get double their value, ultimately winning by 12, 446 to 434. So my play of Ab does win when I draw the N and Andy draws the J, regardless of whether he tries to play SH. However, if I draw the N and Andy does not have the J, it falls to the same pitfall as B. Namely, Andy can pass his turn, because then, once again, I'm going to be in an impossible situation. Because if I triple, then I'm going to draw the J and be stuck with it, and I'll leave you guys to check the details, but even though I've scored a little bit more with my B-fish in this case, Andy's still going to have easily enough to win in that endgame by J-sticking me and playing off 1 tile at a time. Ab also doesn't help me try to win without a triple, because now the problem is, in almost all cases when Andy does have the J, he's going to have either Gel through the E and therein, or Raj through the A and Mikvah, which will both easily be more than enough to outrun anything other than a triple. The only possible situation when he wouldn't have Gel is if at least one of the L's are in the bag. And the only possible situation when he wouldn't have Raj is when the R is in the bag. So that means the only possible situation where he doesn't have either Gel or Raj, again assuming he has the J, is if one L and the R are in the bag. But the problem is, if the L and the R are in the bag after Ab, neither of these 2 tiles give me a playable bingo. So in sum, after Ab, if I draw a playable bingo, and Andy has the J, which once again I need him to have the J, or else he just passes and wins, then he's guaranteed to have either Gel or Raj, both of which score over 20 points and unload his J, and then my non-triple bingo is not going to be enough. So, once again, in sum, Ab and B win under the same exact circumstances. If I draw one of the 2 N's, and Andy already has the J. So now, guys, comes the part you all have been waiting for. How does the math, and specifically the combinatorics, factor in? What we need to do is calculate the odds of a B-fish winning me the game. As I've said multiple times, there are 2 events I need to occur for this to win. Event number 1 is Andy drew the J after his bingo of therein. Event number 2 is, given that, I draw one of the 2 N's unseen to me. Let's look at event 1 first, which once again is Andy having drawn the J after his bingo and now having it on his rack. The thing to keep in mind is, since Andy bingoed, he didn't keep any tiles, so it's completely random what he has on his rack. There's no inferences or any other external factors like that influencing the likelihood of him having any given tile. So what that means is, with 9 tiles unseen to me, and 7 of those 9 tiles on his rack, the odds that any given tile is on his rack intuitively would be 7 in 9. And one way you can show that a little bit more concretely using combinatorics is as follows. You first think about the odds of Andy not having the J. In other words, the odds that the J is still in the bag. With 9 tiles to choose from and 2 in the bag, there are 9 choose 2, which is 36 different combinations of 2 tiles that could be in the bag. And how many of those have the J? Well, along with the J, there are 8 other tiles that could be in the bag. So that means there are simply 8 combinations of 2 tiles that have the J that could be in the bag. So that means the odds of the J being in the bag are 8 in 36. So what that means is the odds that Andy has the J, which are the odds that the J is not in the bag, are 1 minus 8 in 36, which comes out to 28 in 36. And guess what? If you reduce 28 and 36, you get 7 over 9, which is the number we intuitively guessed would be correct. So event 1 happens with 7 in 9 probability. And now we look at the odds of event number 2 happening, assuming event number 1 goes my way. Event number 1, of course, is Andy having the J, so we now need to calculate the odds of me drawing one of the 2 N's after playing off the B, assuming Andy has the J. Well, if Andy has the J, that means I, of course, can't draw the J, so that reduces the number of possible tiles I could draw from 9 to 8. Now I can only draw one of D, D, L, L, N, N, R, S. So drawing just one of these tiles, the odds of me drawing an N are 2, the number of N's, divided by 8, the total number of tiles I could draw. So that's 2 over 8, which is, of course, the same as 1 in 4. So that means that the probability that I win the game after playing off a B, which is going to be the probability that both Event 1 and Event 2 happen, is simply going to be the product of these 2 individual probabilities, namely 7/9 times 1/4. And if you do the math, that comes out to 7 in 36, which is just a hair shy of 20%. So not a great chance, but certainly not bad considering I went into this position down over 100 points. But the real question is, can I possibly do better than just playing off a B in the original position? Another option I could consider is, instead of playing off the B, playing off the P, especially because I can score quite well by doing so with Zap and Po for 18 points. Now, the problem with this play is that I don't hit any possible triple-triples through the T. That being said, I do have a lot of potential bingos I can draw down the B column. A D would give me birdies, an L would give me risible, and an N would give me brinies. However, the problem is, none of these bingos are going to score enough to win. If Andy doesn't have the J, then we run into the same problem we've been talking about all along. He is going to pass. And then, if he passes and I bingo, I'm going to draw the J and get J stuck. If Andy does have the J, then, as we mentioned before, he is guaranteed to have either Gel through the E in therein, or Raj through the A in Mikveh, scoring easily enough points to outrun my outbingo, unless LR specifically is in the bag. So let's see what happens in that case. If LR is in the bag after Zap, then Andy is going to have this rack. As I mentioned before, he cannot get rid of his J, and if he tries to outrun Risible with something like Lens, which is his best play in that regard, it's going to fall short, because after Lens, if I bingo out with Risible for 77, I'm going to get another 24 from Andy's rack and win by 3, 444 to 441. However, in this position, instead of playing Lens, Andy has a very sneaky way to guarantee a win here. He can play Un for 2 points, blocking Risible, because there are no possible threats for me to bingo through any of the other tiles with this unseen pool. So even though Andy will get J-stuck most likely after this play, I'm not going to be able to bingo out, and he's going to be up more than enough to withstand a J-stick in the endgame. So, what this means is that fishing off the P actually never wins for me in the original position. As always, if Andy doesn't have the J, he passes. If he has the J, and he can play Gel or Raj, he does that and outruns me. If he has the J and can't play either Gel or Raj, then we have that one situation we just looked at where he plays Un for 2 and stops me from bingoing and wins the game. So this is definitely not what I want to do. So now you might be thinking, okay, well, if playing off the P doesn't work, what else could possibly be better than playing off the B? If I keep both the B and the P, it's going to be very hard for me to bingo on my next turn, so surely I need to get rid of one of them. And that is indeed correct. However, I can actually consider playing off 2 tiles here. Normally, if you can avoid emptying the bag on a fish, it's better, because in theory, when you empty the bag, you have to draw a bingo in 2 spots. Because when you empty the bag, your opponent has full knowledge of your rack, so if they see you're threading a bingo in only 1 spot, they can just block it and win the game. However, this is sort of a unique situation, because Andy's rack is so bad that bingoing, or having a bingo threat in only 1 spot might be sufficient if he literally cannot block it. And with that, I present to you another option worth considering in this position, namely Pi and If for 18 points. Unfortunately, I did not think of this during the game, but the idea is that with a couple of possible 2-tile draws, I'm going to be threatening a triple-triple through the T. That's going to be impossible, or nearly impossible, for Andy to block. If I draw a D and an L, I'm threatening Bristled for 149, and if I draw an L and an S, I'm threatening Bristles for 140. And it turns out in either of these cases, I'm going to win pretty easily. Let's take a look at why. First, if I pull Bristled out of the bag, drawing a D and an L, then Andy is going to be sitting on this rack. His only way to get rid of the J is Raj, which it's not too hard to see that with Bristled about to score 149 points is going to fall well short and I'm going to win the game. And literally his only way to stop Bristled, as we've seen before, is SH for 5. But the problem is, after SH for 5, while he does stop Bristled, I can still play Driblets for 85 through the T, making ES. And given that I'm going to be catching Andy with the J and a bunch of other tiles, it's not hard to see that this is going to win the game for me quite comfortably. And if I draw the LS for Bristles, the situation is even worse for Andy, because now he doesn't even have an S himself to play SH and block. So he's completely helpless to stop my triple-triple out bingo. His best play would just be Raj for 28, and after Bristles comes down for 140, it's quite clear I'm going to be winning by a good margin. So what this means is, in the original position, Pi would have won for me if either I drew a D and an L out of the bag, or an L and the S out of the bag. So let's now use some more math and calculate the odds of me winning after Pi, and see if they would have been better or worse than the odds of me winning after the actual play I made in the game of B, which, like we said before, won with probability 7 out of 36. The first question we should ask ourselves is, how many different possible 2-tile draws are there for me after pi? There are 9 total tiles I could draw, and I'm going to be drawing 2 of these 9 tiles, so that means there are 9 choose 2, which is 36 different possible 2-tile combinations I could draw out of the bag. And now the question is, how many of these 36 combinations result in a win for me? Well, one way, as we saw, I could win is if I draw a D and an L. But there's more than one way I could draw a D and an L because there are 2 Ds and 2 Ls in the bag. So that means, in fact, there are 2 times 2 or 4 different ways I could draw a D and an L. Another way to think about this, if it's kind of confusing, is that I could draw the first D and the first L, that's one possibility. The first D and the second L, it's a second possibility. The second D and the first L, it's a third possibility. Or the second D and the second L, that's the fourth possibility. At the end of the day, all of these are the same, because whatever D and whatever L I draw, they're both going to give me bristled. So that gives me 4 out of 36 to win. But we're not done, because as I mentioned before, I could also draw an L and an S. Now there are 2 L's and just 1 S, so there are 2 times 1 or 2 ways for me to do this. Again, another way you could think about it is I could draw either the first L and the S or the second L and the S. And either way, it doesn't matter, I'm going to have bristles. So this adds another 2 out of 36 to our numerator. So that means the odds of me winning after pi, in other words, the odds of me drawing either DL or LS, are 4 plus 2 over 36, or 6 out of 36. So how does this compare to the play I made during the game of B? Well, as we saw before, B wins 7 out of 36 of the time. So, albeit barely, B is a better play than pi. Part of what I think is so cool about this position is that both of these plays, B and pi, despite winning about the same amount of the time, rely on completely different outcomes to win the game. Both use the same mechanism of going for a virtually unblockable triple-triple through the T and therein. However, after B, I'm relying exclusively on drawing one of the 2 N's for pristine. However, after pi, I never win if I draw an N. I only win if I draw a D and an L, or an L and an S for bristled or bristles, respectively. To the best of my knowledge, there is no play I could have made in this position that would have given me a better chance than the 7 and 36 after the play that I made. However, if any of you guys watching this video think you have a better play, then please mention it in the comments, because that's the beauty of these positions. They're really complicated and it's hard to know for sure, so I could definitely be missing something. I want to close out the video, though, by telling you guys what actually happened in the game. As I mentioned, I played B for 4 points. And unfortunately for me, I drew, of all things, the J. Andy was sitting on this rack here, and of course he didn't know that I just drew the J. And he realized that if the J was in the bag, I would be threatening to bingo out with Spirited through the T, which is not a triple-triple, but would still be worth 83 points. And it's worth mentioning that Andy was very low on time at this point in the game. And he could safely play something like Ben's for 16, because even if he draws the J, I'll leave you guys to check the math, he'll still win by a couple of points after Spirited. But I don't think Andy had enough time to do the exact math on that, so he made a much safer play. Namely, he passed his turn, knowing full well that if I bingoed immediately with Spirited, I would be J-stuck in the endgame, and he'd be able to win easily, even if he were to go over time by a minute or so, and incur a potential 10-point penalty. Andy had, of course, been doing the best to plan for potential situations while I was thinking about what to do on my turn before eventually playing B, and to his credit, he had thought about passing as a very likely tactic to be useful, and he put it into play with great speed and accuracy in this position. So like I said, major props to Andy on passing here. Not an easy thing to ever really think about, let alone to actually be able to do it in a tournament game is pretty cool. I've seen passing come up in several games I've been a part of, but I don't believe I've ever had a tournament game before this one where it was correct to pass a turn other than when someone was actually stuck with a tile in the endgame. So really cool stuff, and once again, major shout out to Andy on coming up with that in this position. So Andy passed. I, of course, like I said, drew the J. At this point, I couldn't play off the J alone, so I knew it was time to throw in the towel. I played Jibber for 44 points. Andy still had no vowels, but he's got more than enough of a cushion to hold on in this endgame. He plays Rand for 14, and I finally went out with Spied for 32, actually cutting the spread to a fairly respectable 26 points, with Andy winning the game 443 to 417 when all was said and done. So there you have it, guys. Once again, major shout out to Andy on having the foresight and wherewithal to pass after I played off my B. Really impressive stuff and a well-earned win for him. And as for my play, it looks like I gave myself the best chance possible I could have to win after B with a 7 in 36 probability of winning this game. Like I said, if any of you guys find a play that you believe wins more often than this, definitely let me know in the comment section and I will gladly take a look. But yeah, I just love this position for its mathematical richness and complexity, but also its concreteness, because with Andy having just bingoed, everything is complete randomness. There's no sense of inference or no shades of gray whatsoever. It's just a clear math problem trying to figure out the probability of winning after each play. And I think it's a super instructive position, like I said, for people who are looking to take their pre-endgame and endgame skills to the next level, and also a really cool position to show your friends who maybe don't know that much about competitive Scrabble or Scrabble as a math game at the high level. So please share this video. I really hope you and anybody you share it with finds it interesting. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I hope to see you all soon for the next video. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.